So here I am 10 rows later, and I'm trying to get this in the right position to focus it. You can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ridges on this side, and on this side I have the same 7 ridges. You can stand for a moment and count. So I have 7 ridges, 7 stitches, and I'm ready to start now with my tab. And the tab is pretty easy. Depending on the number of rows you should have, because you're working even number of rows, your little bit of tail here is going to be on this side. So, and that's useful because you'll see it will hide the cast on inside away from the edge, so it will be in part of the knitting, so when you weave it in. So now we're just going to continue doing what we've been doing, and we're going to knit 7 stitches. So our 7 stitches are going to be knit, and I like to have a spare needle for the next set. We're now going to pick up 7 stitches, and I find many cases it's easier to pick up the stitches and then knit them instead of trying to knit and pick them up at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this spare needle and I'm going to find that top of the ridge, that stitch there on the top. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the last one is right there in that provisional cast on, and well, maybe it's not. Maybe I should start here. Okay, here, this is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have 7 stitches. And what I'm going to do now is, if you're doing this with a circular needle or whatever, I would take my spare double-pointed needle, or if you're working with, whatever. And now I'm going to knit those stitches. 1, 2, 3. I picked mine up backwards. I tend to knit combination, if you've watched my introductory video. So I just will knit to the back. I find that people who don't knit continental tend to pick up their stitches differently, because it's just the way they say they're doing. If not, if you have to knit into the back, then you knit into the back for 7 stitches. Okay, so now I am down to my provisional, and here's this little thing where I've joined them. And now what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to pick up stitches, and I have on the arm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 stitches on my needle. And this is one of the reasons I like this cast on, is so this first one is loose. So we're going to slide the needle into these. Now they are a little tight, but I think that they're better tight than loose. I think that the cast on looks better. So I'm going to carefully pick up the stitches on the needle, pull out the provisional yarn, bingo, and now I have 7 stitches. The tail is, as I say, on the inside of the shawl, not on the oh no, I'm going to want to do this. It's not on the outside edge, and I find that this makes it look a little neater. And I'm going to knit 2, 3, I picked this one up backwards, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have my shawl started, and it is a perfectly invisible cast on, especially along the edge. All you have are ridges of garter stitch. You do not see where you started. When you weave in this edge, it will be part of away from the edge of the shawl, and the will be invisible. And the next row on the shawl will be another row of purl. Though there are some patterns that will start you with row 1 of your joining your tab being a pattern row. So they will say, as you change the tab, knit 7, then they will have you knit and yarn over in a specific pattern that works for your shawl, so that when you're knitting this row, you will have not 3 times 7 or 21 stitches. You might have more stitches because you've already done a decrease. So that's going to vary. How many you pick up is going to vary with each and every shawl pattern, but it's fairly common as you're joining the edges of the tab. I'm going to now, just for example's sake and make life easier for you, I'm going to slip these onto 3 separate needles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 7 more, so that you can see the tab without having it bent. That's 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, so now let's put this down and straighten it out. So here's our working yarn. Oh, there we go. We missed one, or dropped one. And again, this is a good, comfortable example of showing you that when we did, because of that, we have our numbers all wrong. There we go. So you now have 7, 7, and 7, or one gets moved to this needle. Oh, okay. Whole bunch of adjustments to make. Should have knitted them on 7 to a needle to begin with. Now you see that you have a tab for your sweater. This is going to continue to be, this first needle and last needle will be the garter stitch edge to your shawl that will continue as you work. These 7 stitches will be divided into the back of your shawl. So one will be, depending on how the shawl is shaped, the center will have a yarn over either side of the center stitch and become a center spine, or sometimes you have a center back panel, so you might have more than not have a center spine. You might have an increase knit to an increased center back panel, whatever. This is one way to start a tab. Now, there is something else you can do with a tab cast on, and another reason why I did what I did, which is if you want to knit something in the round, you can use the same cast on. And you say, what? How do I do that? Well, I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more stitches along the second edge. I'm going to take my 5th needle and I'm going to knit, and I have now started to knit in the round. Now, depending on what you're knitting, you can knit a sock this way, you can knit a hat this way, you can knit a blanket this way. If you're knitting a hat, you might have 4 stitches to start as your provisional cast on with 8 rows and have a very small center tab, similar to what you might have for a shawl. If you are knitting a sock, what you do is you fold it this way so that this is the toe, and this garter stitch is very stretchy, so it can make a very useful way to start a toe and keep track, again, of joining in the round with 4 stitches. Be a very small tab, and then you increase following the stitch pattern, whatever stitch pattern you're using, and usually you do it only here and here to increase the stitches, and sometimes you increase on all 4 sides. So we now have 4 times 7 is 28 stitches, you might increase until you have 60, increasing every other round, shaping your toe at the same time, either having a round shaped toe or having a flat toe by only increasing 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches every other round until you have the desired number. If you're doing a hat, again, you'd increase probably at every other side. You'd have a nice forearm spiral. You could figure out different patterns. If you're having 4 or 5 or 6 stitches, even with a size 7 needle, you'd have a much smaller square. Your starting square could be covered with a pom-pom. The starting square, because it wants to be flat, it's a flat, would tend to eliminate the peak that you sometimes get on hats that are knit in the round, that sometimes call for knitting, making a change in the rate of increases. So here is just another way of doing a specialty cast on. So the cast on I used originally, let's just try and make it flatter. That's it. I don't know. This cast on I used was the Elizabeth Zimmerman provisional cast on. You can use any provisional cast on, especially if you're using circular needles. It becomes very easy to use any cast on. And once you have learned how to do a tab cast on, whether you pick up stitches on 2 sides, 3 sides, or 4 sides, you can have a way to start invisibly, and have another option for casting on.